Donald Trump's daddy paid him 300,000 a year when Donald Trump was just 3 years old, but now he can make French fries. Hey, Chris Graham here, Augusta Free Press. Fun political stunt from Sunday as we're talking here. Donald Trump at a closed McDonald's in semi-urban, semi-rural southeastern Pennsylvania on Sunday, making French fries, working the drive-through. Of course, the place was closed. Pre-selected folks going through the line. Trump today got himself a French fry operator certificate pin because he learned how to drop a basket of French fries into grease and turn it on. That's just funny. Um, he got the award from a Republican congressman in North Carolina, Chuck Edwards, who was at an event with Trump in Western North Carolina, where Trump continued to advance his lies about how FEMA is not helping people in North Carolina. Something this Chuck Edwards guy, who represents, that part of North Carolina, actually had debunked about a week ago. But he's got to kiss the ring because he's a Republican and he wants to continue being elected Republican. So that's what you got to do if you're Chuck Edwards, who owns McDonald's, actually. The McDonald's he said he grew up working at in Henderson, North Carolina. I mean, I admire that. If that's your dream is to, work there in high school and buy it eventually and run it and make some money, that's great. No problem with that. Certainly, that's lift yourself up by your bootstraps kind of stuff there. Um, the I got to tell you the background for me. I worked in the fast food business growing up. And no, it's not going to be on my resume. And I don't know that there are records from 1988, 89, 1990, probably 91, 92. Gosh, yeah, I worked all the way up until 94 or 95. I started in high school all the way through past college, making extra money doing some of these jobs. I doubt that there's any records anywhere laying around. The one convenience store I worked at, the guy who ran it's now unfortunately passed away, and his son's not working in that business anymore. I don't know that the local McDonald's, local Burger King, local Hardee's, and local Papa John's would have electronic files of my record. So, you know what? You go ahead and say it. I didn't vote. I didn't work there because that's what we do these days. But no, yeah, I worked the cash register in my couple of months at McDonald's in high school, my senior year of high school. I took orders, handled money, occasionally when you needed to, when it was really busy, you drop the fries in the grease and throw some salt on it. Made milkshakes, and that's not as it wasn't as hard as it would be to sound. You just kind of held a cup underneath and pushed a button. Uh, chocolate chocolate vanilla swirl. Now I did do the same job at Hardee's. They paid a little more, so I jumped and did that for a couple of summers in college. I made 3.75 an hour at McDonald's, made 4 an hour at Hardee's. Um, at Hardee's, I also did the cash register. You had to do some other things there too. You had to, make sure the coffee was brewing and hot. Um, and their milkshakes were a little harder, at least the one summer I worked there, they introduced a new peach shake. And so, when you'd make the shakes, the regular, the chocolate vanilla swirl, you kind of just held the cup under there again like you did at McDonald's. But when you had to make the peach shakes, you had to actually reach in there. They had a this thing in the refrigerator with underneath the apparatus there that had the peach stuff. It was peaches, but it was also in like a gel, right? So you kind of scooped it out of there, and then you had to, you put it in the vanilla, and then you had to actually blend it. So that was tougher. That was tougher. That was, gosh, of all the things, I ran the broiler at Burger King. That just involved, all right. So the top line you put, I think it was there were two lines. I think you put the bread on the top line, and then you put the burgers on the bottom line, the Whoppers or the regular burgers, right? And then they went down this line, and it took like 2 minutes or whatever to go down. And then at when you did that, how many ever you had to make, you did make them, you make them your way. That's Burger King's motto. That's what we did. But then you had to go down to the other end and get them out of there, and then then you made them. Then you made it to order. So yeah, they didn't leave things sitting around there. But that was the only hard part of that was it was really hot back there. No matter what time of year it was really hot back there. And I had acne anyway, so I'm standing over this broiler and it's fuming me up there. So I think making the peach shakes was maybe tougher than that, but the peach shakes were fun to do. That wasn't so bad. I worked for Papa John's delivering pizzas one summer, and people were cheap. People in Waynesboro back then, this is 1994, people were cheap. They, I made minimum wage, and pretty much the job was for tips. The biggest tip I ever got was $5. You're delivering pizzas, you're driving around, and you get $5, and that's the biggest tip I got. That's like one tip I got $5. I mean, people were pretty cheap back then. That's the more I learned the lesson. Tip well. Whenever my wife and I go out to eat, or I go pick something up, even tip well. Tip well. And I ran a cash register at a convenience store. I mentioned a convenience store. The fun story there, one night we were closing. The place basically ran from 6 to 11. So it wasn't a 7-Eleven, it was a 6 to 11. And I worked the night shift most of the time at this point because I was doing substitute teaching during the day. I was mixing in some writing, and then I worked this job. I didn't work it full time, but it was extra hours. And so, but I worked the night shift because then I could, stay up later and write. And so, um, yeah, the one night, so we're getting ready to close. We started working on closing at about 10 o'clock at that job, and uh, it was my job. I was the guy. I was pretty much the only guy at that time. There was a manager, but I was the only guy who just worked as cashier. And so it was always two people. It was me and one lady, and so we're sitting there. The way this store was set up was really weird. Um, right beside the door was where the safe was. They didn't keep the safe in the back for some reason. They kept the safe right there at the door. And so so 10 o'clock, I'm starting to mop and starting to clean up and make sure the cooler's all filled up and stuff. Because, there's out in rural Augusta County, there weren't a lot of people that would come in after 10. We stayed there, stayed open until 11 just in case. But and so about 10:15 or so, I'm kind of walking around the store. I look outside and there's a van sitting right in front of the front door. Three of the scuzziest looking white guys I've ever seen sitting there just staring at the front door. Now, this is like 94 again, 95 maybe. I'm not sure. But so there's no cell phones. I mean, there were cell phones, but a lot of people didn't have cell phones. And this was a rundown looking van. There's three rundown looking guys sitting there, and it's 10:15, and we're out in the middle of nowhere, Augusta County. And you got to think the worst. I mean, they're just sitting there staring at the door. They're not doing, they're not coming in, and so uh, we actually locked the doors early, called 911, and it took the county sheriff's office over an hour to get to us. Uh, when and he came, so we're out again. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and you could hear the guy like he's put his sirens on. You could hear the sirens coming. It was a couple minutes at least out in the middle of nowhere there, and these guys took off. They took off, and he caught him. He's because he came back and told us about all this. Caught him a mile down the road, and then they said that they were just there waiting for somebody, and then he let them go. So we almost got killed for $4 an hour out in the middle of nowhere. They'd have been long gone before. I mean, I'd have been gutted before they ever were found. Um, so I'll say all that to say, you know, uh, I like that Donald Trump, he's getting praise from Republicans who are saying, "Wow, he went out there to be a man of the people." He's showing he did 15 minutes of work there at McDonald's. He's being a man of the people. Okay, I mean that's fine. He learned how to drop the fries in there, and he handed out some bags to a drive-through. He didn't have to work the job for 8 hours. He didn't have to work a week and then live off what he made. He didn't have to have that job for a while and live off what he made. My case is my Kamala Harris's case. We're trying to save money to pay for school. He didn't have to do that. This guy, again, I mentioned this in the headline of this. I mean, his dad, Fred, who made his family's wealth by skimming money from federal contracts for affordable housing, mainly in New York. That's how they made their millions. That's how they made their, I mean, in today's value, low billions of dollars of family profit, skimming money off of affordable housing project contracts. Glorious people they are, right? But a way to get around the taxes on all this stuff is that Fred Trump made his children the supers, the managers of some of these slums that he built, and he'd pay them a salary. And the salary he paid Donald at the age of 3 was $300,000. This guy, Donald Trump, has no clue what it's like for real people to have to deal with what they have to deal with on a regular basis. Um, so 15 minutes of a photo op is going to enlighten him to that. That's not what it's all about. He got asked yesterday about his ideas on raising the federal minimum wage from 7.25 an hour, which has not been raised in over 30 years, right? He couldn't answer the question because the guy who hosted him, the McDonald's franchisee, and they're in southeastern Pennsylvania, has been fighting to raise the minimum wage. He's been writing letters to state officials for years, protesting the idea that the minimum wage could be raised, saying it might put him out of business. So that's why that photo op was staged there. Wasn't to have him get to be to have Donald Trump learn what it's like for real people to have to live on subpar wages and figure out how to work their lives around that. It was just so he could have a political stunt. It didn't learn anything. But it was fun for me. Sometimes miss those days. I got to learn. Gosh, I made pizzas. I made Whoppers. Got to use a slicer. I mean, that was some fun stuff back in those days. So anyway, hey, if you have any comments for me, any questions, any tips, you want to tell me I'm an idiot. A lot of people knew that. That's fine. Feel free to drop me an email at chris@augustafreepress.com.